The fourth is difficult because you suffer. Not the other person suffer, you suffer. And you believe that your suffering has been caused by him or by her. If it were another person who has done that to you, you would have suffered less. But it's not another person. That's him, that's her, that's the person you love the most that has done it to you. If it were another person who has said that to you, you would not be as painful as now, because it is the person you love, you trust the most that has said that to you. So you suffer very deeply. And you feel very alone, very alone. And you prefer to go to your room and lock yourself up in your room and cry. Because you get hurt so much that even that person, the other person come and inquire about your ill-being, you don't want to answer. You want to tell him or her indirectly that you don't need him, you don't need her anymore. You can survive very well without him or her. That is silly, but many of us do like that. That's pride, the element of pride in love. And that is the opposite of interbeing, inside of interbeing. There is a self standing on the way. You get hurt. When the other person say, darling, you suffer of something, and you say, me suffer? Why do I have to suffer? Why do I have to suffer? You pretend not to suffer. And if he wants to put his hand on your shoulder, you say, leave me alone. You do everything in order to tell him indirectly that you don't need him, you don't need her. Alone you can survive very well. That is a kind of punishment. You want to punish him. And that is not true love. Because in true love you have to share everything. Your suffering is his suffering. Your happiness is her happiness. And you find it very difficult to go to him and ask for help. But the real practice, the true practice, is to tell him, tell her that you suffer. There is a true story happening in Vietnam at the end of the 15th century. There is a lady who was pregnant, Namsung Lady, and her husband had to go to war, to the army. They are both young, and they cried so much when the young man left, and she had to raise the child alone, to give birth and to raise the child alone. He was in the army for 3 years, and he was lucky to be released from the army alive. So he went home, and she learned about good news. She went to the gate of the village with that little boy to greet him. And that was a very happy moment when they meet each other again after 3 years. And it is the first time that the young father see his son. So according to our tradition, you have to announce the good news to your ancestors. In Vietnam, there is the practice of ancestral worship. Every house has an altar for ancestors. And every morning, you have to come to the altar and remove the dust and light a stick of incense and offer. It takes 1 minute or 2, but to us it's a very important practice, because we believe that our ancestors are always alive, at least in ourselves. And wherever we go, our ancestors go with us. Not outside, but inside. And the minute when you spend in order to be with your ancestors, to light a stick of incense, is the moment when you connect with your ancestors. It's very important. If you are uprooted and then you do not have enough stability, and when something important happen in the family, you have to announce to your ancestors formally. Suppose a baby is born, you have to offer to place on the altar an offering and announce the birth of the baby, because your ancestors have the right to know. If you are sending your boy to school in next town, you have to make an offering and place on the altar and announce that to your ancestors. If you are about to marry your daughter, you have to announce that to your ancestors. And that is the practice of everyone. So the lady went to do some shopping in order to prepare an offering. And the man is left with his son and tried to persuade the son to call him daddy, father. But the little boy refused. Mister, you are not my father, my daddy. My daddy used to come every night. And my mother talked to him at length. And she cried. And whenever my mother sit down, my father sit down. And when my mother lie down, he lie down. And when the young father hear that, he suffers so much. He believed that there was another man who, in his absence, intruded into his household, his family. So his heart became a block of ice. He went home without saying anything with the little boy. In fact, there is no one coming every night. One day, the boy came home late, playing with the people, with the children in the hamlet, and he said, "Mother, everyone has a daddy. Where is my daddy? I want to have a father, a daddy." So she was lighting the kerosene lamp, and she pointed to her own shadow on the wall and said, "This is your daddy. Why don't you say good evening to him?" do like this. Good evening, Daddy. And that is the truth that happened. And of course, she spent a little time talking to her own shadow. She was so lonely. She talked to him. My dear husband, you have been away for a long time. How could I be alone and raise our child? And of course, when she sit down, the shadow sit down. And that is the truth. But the young man has a wrong perception that someone has intruded into the home. And that's why when the lady came home, he did not look at her anymore. He did not answer her question anymore. It was very cold. And she began to suffer. She did not understand why, what happened. And when the offering has been placed on the altar, he spread a mat and offered the incenses and touched the earth 4 times, according to the tradition. And after that, he rolled up the mat and did not allow the young lady to do the touching of the earth, thinking that she is not worth presenting herself before the altar because she had committed adultery. And she was very humiliated. She did not know why. And instead of sharing a meal, he left and went to the liquor bar and tried to forget his suffering by drinking, and did not come home until 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. And he kept doing like that several times. And the lady suffered so much, she could not bear it anymore. And she threw herself into the river Huang Yang nearby. And when he learned about the death of his wife, he came home and took care of the child. And that night when he lighted the kerosene lamp, the boy said, "Mister, here is my daddy." And he pointed to the shadow of his father. He comes every night. And now, the young father knew the truth, but it's too late. He's victim of a wrong perception. It's too late. And the next day, everyone in the village learned about the tragedy. And they came and helped the young man to organize a requiem ceremony for 3 days to pray for the liberation of the soul of the young woman. The king, Lê Thánh Tông, who was a poet, one day he went by and he saw a shrine built near to the river. He asked about it, and the people in the village told the king about the story, the tragedy. He was so moved, he wrote a poem that was engraved on a block of rock, and that poem still exists. That is because a tragedy happened, because Mr. Tung, his name, Lady Namsung, her name, they don't know how to practice the 4th mantra. The 4th mantra is like this. Darling, I suffer. Darling, I suffer. Please help. Please explain. Why have you done such a thing to me? Why have you said such a thing to me? I suffer, please help. if Mr. Trương had done that, and then the Namsung Lady would have had the time to explain, and they both would have been able to avoid the tragedy. And she behaved like that also. She was hurt, and there was a pride in her also. If she had gone to him and said, "Darling, my husband, I suffer so much. I don't understand why from the time I came home from the market, you did not look at me anymore. You did not answer my questions anymore. Have I done something horrible for you to treat me like that? Please help. Please explain." And if she had done that, Mr. Trương would have told her. The little boy said that someone used to come every night. "Who is that? I suffer so much. Please explain." And then there was explanation, and there will be no tragedy. And although it is a little bit difficult to practice, but the fourth mantra is very essential to avoid the tragedy. So next time, dear friends, if it happens that you suffer, and if you believe your suffering has been caused to you by him, by her, the person you love the most, don't do like Mr. Trương. Don't do like Mrs. Namsung. Don't do like that. Don't get pride stand on your way. Go to him, go to her, and ask for help. In Plum Village, we advise our friends to take a piece of paper the size of a credit card and write down the 3 sentences. The first sentence is, "Darling, I suffer, and I want you to know it." Darling, I suffer, and I want you to know that I suffer. You don't pretend that you don't suffer. You suffer, and you say you suffer. Because in the beginning you have committed together to share everything, and suffering and happiness. So this is something natural. You suffer, you say, you tell him you suffer. You tell her you suffer. The second line is, "I'm doing my best." Because I am a practitioner of mindfulness. I am practicing mindful breathing, mindful walking, and look deeply into my suffering to see whether it has come from a wrong perception or not. Because I can be very well victim of a wrong perception. Maybe you have not intended to make me suffer, but because I have some wrong perceptions, so I am doing my best in looking deeply into my suffering. And that second sentence is a kind of indirect invitation for the other person to practice. What I have done, what I have said to make him or make her suffer that much, and that person begin to reflect, to think. That is practice. And the last sentence is, "Please help, please help me." And you can slip that piece of paper into your wallet. That is the Dharma in your wallet, the Buddha in your wallet. And every time you suffer and you believe that your suffering has been caused by him, by her, the person you love the most, take it out and you know exactly what to do.